The United States operates a 45-square-mile military base inside the borders of a nation it has considered an adversary for decades. Every year, the U.S. government sends Cuba a rent check for exactly $4,085. This arrangement highlights a strange geopolitical reality. Since the Cuban Revolution, the government in Havana has cashed exactly one of those checks. They want the base gone, but they cannot legally evict the U.S. military. This arrangement has survived decades of revolution and diplomatic tension because of a calculated legal framework designed to project American power across the Caribbean. In 1898, as the Spanish-American War came to a close, the United States appeared to be dismantling the final vestiges of Spanish colonialism to liberate the Caribbean. The 1898 Treaty of Paris ended Spanish rule, but it functioned as a massive real estate transaction. It transferred the sovereign deeds of Cuba, Puerto Rico, and other territories directly to the United States. The U.S. used this treaty to signal a shift in regional tactics. Over the next 19 years, Washington would rely on contracts and acts of Congress to engineer a lasting structure of dominance. Although the earlier Teller Amendment prohibited the U.S. from claiming formal ownership of Cuba, the 1901 Platt Amendment established the terms of American control. The amendment dictated 7 strict conditions for the withdrawal of U.S. troops. Cuba received technical independence, but legally surrendered its autonomy to make treaties or incur public debt, while authorizing the U.S. military to intervene in Cuban affairs to maintain order. These restrictions led directly to the 1903 lease of Guantánamo Bay. The treaty required Cuba to lease specific lands to the U.S. for coaling and naval stations for as long as the U.S. deemed it necessary. The 1903 agreement and a subsequent 1934 treaty designate the United States as the only party that can terminate the lease unilaterally. Unless both governments agree to cancel it, or the U.S. chooses to abandon the property, the arrangement is permanent. By weaponizing the legal terms of Cuba's independence, the United States successfully turned a sovereign nation into a bound protectorate. While Cuba navigated the limits of independence, Puerto Rico was designated an unorganized territory. Under the Treaty of Paris, the U.S. Congress claimed unlimited power over the status of its inhabitants. In 1917, the Jones-Shafroth Act granted Puerto Ricans U.S. citizenship, but explicitly withheld voting representation in Congress. Residents became citizens of the United States without the right to vote in the general elections that determined federal law. The strategic value of this status became clear 2 months later. With the passage of the Selective Service Act, Puerto Rican men became eligible for the draft, and approximately 20,000 were conscripted into the Army for World War I. This legal category allowed the U.S. to utilize Puerto Rico's geography and manpower while ensuring its people bore the obligations of citizenship without full political rights. To secure these regional assets, the U.S. required total control over the maritime routes connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The 1903 Hay-Bunalvarilla Treaty granted the U.S. the right to act as if it were the sovereign over a 10-mile-wide canal zone bisecting Panama. The treaty was negotiated for the new republic by a French citizen who had not been in the country for 18 years. In 1917, the U.S. expanded its reach to the Danish West Indies. Fearing German influence in the region, the U.S. successfully pressured Denmark to sell the islands for $25 million by threatening a military seizure. The native population had no vote in the transaction. Whether through treaties drafted by foreign agents or purchases made under the threat of war, these legal instruments prioritized the security of maritime shipping lanes over democratic consent. These varied arrangements lead to a central question. How could the U.S. government hold millions of people and vast territories in entirely separate, unequal states of rights? The answer came from the Supreme Court. In a series of decisions known as the Insular Cases, the court ruled that constitutional rights do not automatically apply to U.S. territories. They held that Puerto Rico was foreign to the United States in a domestic sense. These rulings provided the final validation for a 2-tiered system of American governance. They allowed Congress to govern island territories through specific statutes while paying little attention to the political realities of the people living there. In the span of just 19 years, the United States executed a legal blitz that secured a protectorate, an unorganized territory, a coerced purchase, and a sovereign carve-out. While specific assets like the Panama Canal were eventually returned, the underlying legal framework continues to define the region's geopolitical structure. The Guantánamo lease remains active against the host nation's wishes, and the people of Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands remain bound by federal laws they have no direct voice in passing. These treaties and acts created a hemisphere-wide system of dominance. While military force first opened the door, it was legally binding paper that locked it. In the Caribbean, the most enduring tools of empire were written in ink.